The bottom line is that educate yourself. Do not leave this to somebody else. Do not delegate this to somebody else. Just take a 2-week here. Start watching YouTube. I don't care what you start doing. Get your own account. Start playing with it. It's trained on trillions of bits of data now. You can ask it anything and it'll know an answer. It may not know the best way to paint, but it'll try and tell you how to paint. Don't delegate it off to somebody else because it's in my opinion, it is the biggest piece of technology to come across in any lifetime.
AI and racing. What does those two things have in common? Besides they're my favorite subject, actually quite a lot. There's a lot of things you can learn from both racing and AI, and both very applicable to business, the lessons you learn in there. I guess today Darren has done a lot of racing himself. So just to start us off, take us back to the beginning when you initially got into racing. I think it was motorcycles in California, if I remember correctly.
I'm a little bit older. But so I started racing, road racing, motorcycles, club racing. There was a group out there, AFM, the American Federation of Motorcycles, but it was a club series. It was a club race. It was out in California. We would run between Willow Springs and Sears Point. Pretty big heavy hitters back in those days, and it was just a lot of fun. That's how I got started. Just showing up on practice on Saturdays and racing on Sundays, and getting off the streets. I used to race around Mulholland, maybe a little bit illegally, but the bottom line is, we were told one day that, hey, you think you're fast, why don't you just come on out to the track and start playing around with your life? And so showed up, went to New Rider School, and the rest is history, as they say. So it was a lot of fun back then.
And what would you say are some of the lessons from those early days that's very applicable to how you run your business today?
Great question. Some of the key things are that you really, when you're striving to get a factory ride, you're striving to quote unquote make it, to move up the ranks and to win races and everything else. I mean, you really start to learn, or you really kind of grow into the idea of being uncomfortable with risk all the time, and when we look at motorsports now, when we look at business, I mean, it's a very pro-risk business of being in Formula One or being in any form of motorsports. It's very pro-risk. I mean, you just kind of embrace it. You wear it like a badge of honor and you take a lot of risks. And as a part of that is continuous improvement. It doesn't matter whether I was racing cars, motorcycles, drag racing, whatever it is, it's always how do you get better? And you put in a lot of work to get just a little teeny bit faster. So you get used to not having to have so many justifications for taking a risk. It's really all about winning, and it's all about being the best and striving to be the best. And risk just becomes part of the equation. You actually kind of figure out that the more risk and the more challenge you have, the more wins that lie behind it. So that's definitely one of the things that's carried over into my professional, white collar world. That the bigger the mountain or the bigger the challenge, I knew the bigger the payoff was behind it.
I always had the utmost respect for especially motorcycle racers and then also rally car drivers, because that's a different breed of risk that normal humans can't really cope with. You're willing to put yourself in a tree or barrier at 150 miles an hour. Wait, hold up a second. Where did that idea actually start to be sensible? I want to ask you that question.
Yeah, I mean, the audience is crazy. I mean, how many times have we seen them? They're standing on the outside where the centrifugal force is going to take this wrecking ball.
True.
80 people. I'm like, okay, you people are nuts. But, it's like you go back to motorcycle racing. And the funny thing is you had the early 1900s when you had Indy and Harley, Triumph, BMW. When you had those guys and they were racing on the board tracks, we unfortunately don't get to see a lot of images of the board track racing. But it was as big as Daytona. But in 1912, and they would build these high banks out of wood. I mean, that's how ahead of their time these people were. And can you imagine coming off of two wheels and sliding on, I don't even know what they wore back then, across these slivers and wood? These people were insane. But it was apparently a hell of a show. They used to pack them in like 100,000, 80,000, 50,000 people. Cameras and stuff really weren't what they are, obviously, anywhere even near the middle of the century. So we have a lot of drawings of the board racers. But the board racers and the rally cars, and then, of course, there is the Irish road racing, the real road racing they still do today. Everybody knows about the Isle of Man. I get it. But what people don't realize is every other weekend before and every other weekend after, there's some 150 guys racing through the streets in worse areas than Isle of Man, than that course. And you're like, oh, my God. So I think, even I look like at the Chevrolet family and how they used to do those cross-country races in 1918. Here's the president of a car company. He and his brother were jumping in cars and racing around. I think the interesting thing about motorsports is that you get to defy the physics. You do your best to challenge and to go to another level. And in business, it's the same thing. It's like to be innovative, to do something somebody else has done, to go faster than any other person did. I think that it definitely takes a certain breed, and people will race anything. They'll race lawnmowers. They'll race boats. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh. And so, when we get to that dynamic of challenging yourself, taking risk, and yes, you can die. And yes, every year somebody on the Irish Road Racing Series dies. I mean, many of them die. It's a little bit crazy, but whatever. That's their life. That's what they love. And the road rally guys, it's just like you say, they're just cut from a different cloth. I'm just very fortunate to have grown up with a bunch of people that showed me how to do it, really. Because my family, I don't come from a racing. I don't come from a racing family. I kind of got adopted by another one, and I just became part of their family.
I got very lucky in the same respect. My dad had a BSA Gold Star back when he was in college. And by the time I came along, it was like, oh, motorcycles are too dangerous, blah, blah, blah. But I read this book by Mike Hellwood, the famous British racer. And I used to watch old films of him anytime there was a rerun, anything I could watch. And I'm like, kind of intuitively what you said, even as a kid, I was looking at that going, this guy is defying gravity. It's not technically possible, but he sure looks like he is. It's just incredible. So from the days of, basically engines that were almost running on kerosene, today's high-tech stuff, the drive hasn't changed. It's still about risk and just, as we used to say, this is called fun. The more danger, the more fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's, like I said, I mean, it was very strange when you would lose a competitor to death. It was a very strange thing. I don't know. It used to happen a lot more than it does now, obviously. But it was very strange. I think we all wanted to recognize it. We wanted to recognize our fallen brother, but we had to stay positive because we were about to get on the track ourselves. And the other thing you learn being around a racetrack and racing is that if you want to win, you have to be fearless. You can't have your mind clouded by fear. And I see lots of businesses in today's world, especially now in the AI era, they're just almost paralyzed by it. And I think that that's what we all were trying to avoid is, we didn't want to dwell on the negative too much. We wanted to just deal with the fact, and we had to think that wasn't going to happen to us. We had to think. And there's a lot of people that want to remind us, oh, but you could go bankrupt. Oh, but you could fail. Oh, but you could be homeless. It's fear, 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 fear. And I see it crippling businesses every day. And I see it a lot in the AI era. They're just scared of it. They're just afraid of it. And, I think the biggest thing is education. And I think the biggest thing is precautions. And, today we've got airbags on motorcyclists. Mark Marquez is sliding across the asphalt all the time. I mean, he's had some bad injuries, but he's still with us. He's still going well. And these helmet technology has really brought that whole thing back under control. And it's the same thing I have to say about business. Technology can bring your fears back under control, your political concerns back under control. You just got to learn how to harness it so that it doesn't happen to you, like whatever yours you're afraid of. So pretty interesting growing up in that era of racing versus this era of racing.
Exciting is a good word to describe it as well, I would say.
Yeah.
Filled with excitement. But a natural follow-up question is, how do we harness it? as you spoke about?
Well, I mean, the thing that I've been noticing for the last couple months is like I was in Chicago 3 weeks ago. Lots of executives from some big companies. I won't say the names because I don't want them to be embarrassed. But the bottom line is that these are household names, especially here in tool manufacturers and energy companies that you would know, that you've seen on sides of race cars. CTOs, CIOs, everything else. And I just said, hey, how many of you, by show of hands, real quick, before I get too going, how many of you have your own $20 a month account? How many of you are training your own, AI engagement? And, 6 people out of 40 raised their hands. And one was the photographer filming all the activity, and the other one was the waiter. And then 4 others were executives. And I think it's just the same as racing, is if you're sitting outside, you can make all the fun of NASCAR that you want. But until you've driven circle track, which I have, and until you've lived through it, you don't understand how hard that actually is and how insane we're on the edge of traction the entire time. Our road racers are too, but when they're going straight, they're not. And then in a big NASCAR, we're sliding everywhere. We're on the razor. It's like on ice. But if you don't know that, then you think it's not as cool as something else. My point is that having knowledge of what you're getting into is extremely important. And my advice to all the executives out there is to get your own account. Just start learning the psychology of AI. And I know that probably sounds funny, but you are dealing with a neural network. It does do calculations. It's not a person. I get it. But there is a culture. And these AIs, these agents, as you know, Mads, they have personality. They have things they're good at, and they have things they're not good at. The sooner an executive can start learning and stop being so intimidated by it, the better. Why do I say that? Here's what happens. I will go in, Mads, and I will show them the power of AI. What used to take 6 months, I do it in 60 minutes or less. Wow, cool, that's neat. You should talk to my CIO. Because it's technical, they think that we need to hand that off over to a technical person. It's not entirely true. In the AI era, it's more about knowledge and thought and vision, because the technical stuff is now going to be done by an agent. Make sense? So, for example, if we bring it to motorsports and we say, all right, I want to design a new wing, back wing, front wing, side wing, whatever, I can use AI to do it, but I have to tell it what to do. And so AI affects everything. So you need to know what this thing that affects everything, how it just kind of works. You can't delegate it off. Because if you delegate it off, then that person might have fear, or somebody else may have their own ideas, or you start to get into the individuality and the kingdom building and all these things. The thing about AI is that in order to manage it, you have to measure it. You have to monitor it. You have to understand how it works. And you can't delegate that part away. It's just like the drive. I mean, how many of you guys seen a young driver come into any series and he thinks he's made it and he thinks he knows all about it and he's going to leave all the engineering to his engineers? And then he loses. He starts losing. Why? Because he's not managing his car through his engineers. So that's the lesson we can learn. Max Verstappen, why does Max win all the time? Because Max spends a ton of time with his engineers. He knows how to talk to them. He knows how to communicate to them. He knows what to tell them's going on. And they know how to tell him. And they do talk different languages, but they figure out a way to get the point. Because Max is in the car. This is what it's doing. But he describes it to them in a way that they understand. It's the same thing with AI. If you have a vision, if you're a CEO, I don't care if it's $10 million a year or a $2 billion a year company, you've got to know AI and how to talk to it so that you can then talk and convey that to other people in your company. I would like you to build this with AI. I'd like you to build that with AI, that with AI. Well, that can't be done. The executive at that point has to say, I know it can be done. Because what do you think Max does? Max comes in and says, guys, the front end is washing out in turn 4. It's just a nightmare. Well, our data doesn't say that, Max. Max just says, guys, I get it, but I'm going to repeat it again. I know we can get through that corner better because I've gone through it a million times. Take a look at the data. take a look at it. Once you know it can be done, then it can be done, right? Same thing for executives. But the problem is today is that, Mike, what they're doing is they're going, well, I'm told we could build a GPT. And then the IT person might come along and say, well, before we do that, we have to secure all the data. Before we do that, we have to lock all this down. It's like, it's not going to work. You're never going to get there. So you as an executive got to know that that's kind of true, but there's a way to do this. And when I look at racing, when I look at what we were all trying to do as a team, is there was sometimes people that were saying that's not a good idea or don't go in that direction. But as long as the team owner, the crew chief and the driver all believed in it, we'll just figure out a way to get it done. And that's where everybody's at, because there's two kinds of companies. Those guys that are figuring out where it fits and where it doesn't, and learning that it doesn't solve everything, but learning that it does affect everything, and then strategically figuring out where to put it and where to use it, just like a Formula One team is doing today. Do they use it for every single thing? No. But do they use it where it makes sense right now? Absolutely. And then they learn and learn and learn. It's the same advice I have for the executives. Go take a course. Go do a boot camp. Go watch YouTube videos. I don't know what you're going to do, but for at least spend the $20, get your own account, start flopping around on the deck in the privacy of your own home. No one needs to know. And start playing with this thing and just beat it up. Have fun with it. And you will learn more than you probably learned in 10 years.
It is a great tool for learning. All of a sudden you have this great knowledge at your fingertips. When I use it in front of especially my mom, she's still like, what the fuck's going on? It's a wonderful tool, but it's kind of just like magic in some ways, I think. But what is some of your favorite ways to use AI when it comes to like the sales and then sales strategy, improving that operation?
Yeah, great question. Because there is different degrees of it, right? Some people are using it as a big fancy search engine. And that's fine. I got no problem with that. Not everybody's going to be a prompter, but really where I've been having a lot of fun is doing things that just really weren't possible until AI came along. And one of them in this revenue generation sales game is prototyping. Now, again, because of my motorsports upbringing, prototyping to all of us is kind of commonplace. But in business, it was only reserved for super, super large companies and people who had deep pockets. So I think about things like MagnaRide, and General Motors, and, the shock absorber system that has the ability to adjust 3,000 times in X amount of feet. It's incredible what that thing will do. It's used on the Mustang, it's used on certain trucks, et cetera, et cetera. The reality of it is that these prototypes back then, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even if we look at racing, they used to make them out of clay. Remember how you used to make a car out of clay? Or you would make a product out of clay and you would mock it up and you would bring it. And it took, Mike, how long would that take? 9 months at least?
Yeah, months and months of testing. You got wind tunnels and vibration, all kinds of tests.
It's a million things. So we bring that to business now, and it's like what used to take 9 months, 2 years, 6 months, 6 years, whatever the hell it was. MagnaRide was originally invented in 1950 something. A lot of people don't know that, right? It's oil, it's got little metal fragments in it. You magnetize it, it becomes stiff. You unmagnetize it. They've had that technology. I think General Motors has had that for many, many, many decades, but the technology wasn't there. But the reality of it is that when you look at what you can do with prototyping now, Formula One, those guys are building 3 or 4 wings, front wings to bring to the track, or 2 or 3 to try on the test, and then they bring it to the track. You can do prototyping now, and as I think you and I did some prototyping, didn't we, before when we talked? Things that took, in the software game or the telecom game, whatever, things that took months and months and months to design and to build, I can do in 45 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes. And so when we talk about AI, we talk about what it can do. It can take the time out of things. It can really speed things up. And for businesses to be afraid of speeding things up makes no sense to me. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And when we talk about prototyping, and in my book, Apex 8, which is supposed to be out, I know it's taken a while, Matt, but it's supposed to be out July 10th. But for that whole prototyping process, it can be done on anything now. So when we look at AI and we talk about building prototypes and taking ideas and turning them into physical things that we can play with and touch, AI is incredible at that. It's amazingly good at that. But a lot of people aren't even getting into that. They're not even trying that out. And the other thing that I find with AI is that it'll run the scenarios. I mean, if we think about gaming, we think about all of these digital racers now that we have coming to Formula One and coming to different types of motorsports. These kids have been racing cars in a simulator on their Xbox since they were 8 years old, as well as racing go-karts since they were 8 years old. And so they're able to drive a hell of a lot more and a lot more courses. I remember when I was running just a grassroots racing system in like 2012 or whatever. I think I told you, Mads, I would watch the YouTube videos, but then I would also get on the simulator games. And if that was a track that we were going to be racing at that was also in the Xbox, then I would watch the videos and then I would go and race something. So by the time I showed up at the track, I could be at competitive pace within 4 or 5 laps. You couldn't do that years ago. You just didn't do that. It wasn't possible. Now you take AI and you put yourself into an AI-built simulator of a track, you can get, look at these Formula One drivers. You can get hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of drive time and go be successful. When we talk about business, think about that. Think about the engineering now, just the design of a better barbecue. Well, that doesn't sound like much, Darren. Well, I know, but think about it. What if it's a rotisserie thing? What if it's this? I can simulate it using AI. I can test it using AI. I can have AI think of things I haven't thought of. I can do all of these prototyping things that I can really start to do, not just in AI, but as part of it, right? And I can really accelerate the learning curves real quick before I put a product out. When we talk about that, it becomes huge. Validation becomes huge. Presentations, demos get changed. In my book, in Apex 8, we talk about finalizing deals. We don't talk about closing deals. Yes, it means the same thing. But back in the day when the asymmetry of knowledge was with the sales guy, and then it wasn't with the customer, then that sales guy had to close hard to get them to do what they believe they needed to do. Now we've got so much more data on the customer side. The customer knows more than a lot of salespeople, and they can tell that more than that salesperson. That salesperson's job is now to get them over the fear. That's all their job really has become in some ways. But the bottom line is that when you look at sales, you're just finalizing that. And you're just helping that person remove the barriers that are keeping them from doing that. And you can do that with AI so much better than you ever could. What does that look like? That looks like this. Well, what about this? What about this? What about that? They ask about those questions early on. Then you go through demos or you show them how it fits into their world. And then when it's time to finalize and for them to spend millions of dollars, it's just that they forgot. You just got to remind them. Well, now you've got AI who's been taking notes the entire time. And you say, well, remember this? We're going to do this. Remember this? We're going to do this. Remember this? We're going to do this. Oh, that's right. Yeah, what am I worried about? Yeah, what are you worried about? And the other big thing in the tech game, the sales game, whatever persuasion game is when you kind of debrief, when you go back through what happened. When you're designing a race car and you debrief after the race. Now, this was a trick that I learned in racing that came over to business, which is I used to demand that we debrief, win, lose, or draw. Now, a lot of people don't want to do that, but that's where you learn the most, period, is from your failures, right? more lessons to be learned in failures than there ever is in a win. Because it's the failures that get you to the win. And it's the losses that get you to the win. And you learn that in motorsports, and you're just, the entire time you're trying to accelerate as fast as you can. What did we learn? And so when Formula One teams, there's Formula One teams today that don't debrief, and there's those that do. And there's ones that debrief win, lose, or draw, and there's those that don't. And they only debrief when they won. It's a very funny thing. But I coach the book. I talk about the debrief, win, lose, or draw. And when you do it, you've got to be honest with yourself. Well, AI is brutally honest. It's brutally honest. Because you go back and you look at it. Why did we lose this $3 million deal? Why did we lose this entire solar field we could have sold? Or whatever it is that you're in the business of persuading people to buy. When you do a debrief with AI and all the data is there, you learn a hell of a lot faster. And you won't make those mistakes again. And so when I look at Formula One, I look at racing, I look at the really good teams, they debrief, win, lose, or draw. So all we're doing in the book is we're just bringing that to the business world, and we're saying, you should know why you win, why you lose, and why you almost got it, or why you almost lost it. It's funny when you really start using AI from beginning to the end of a sales engagement or a commercial engagement, and you debrief, holy smokes. You will accelerate everything that you're doing, because in racing, when we make a mistake, you either lose millions or someone dies or you're all out of a job. And it's very cutthroat. The great thing about motorsports, it teaches us if you don't perform, you're going home. Politics really is in there. It's starting to creep into Formula One. It has me a little bit nervous, but it will work itself out again, because as soon as something catastrophic happens, everybody will regroup and rebound. The key thing about a debrief is, why did we lose? Why did we win? What are we keeping? What are we not keeping? You got AI keeping track of all that. You didn't have that before, but now you really do. We all worked hard in motorsport, hard on my analog teams over the years. We really, really brought that into the game. But now, today, I have the ability to deliver an amazing debrief. And then when you do the handoff, you can go two different ways. You can do a handoff to the team that's going to go put the system in, the service, the technology, the installation team, whatever it is. You can give them a handoff to guarantee that the customer has the experience they were promised. That's a huge thing. But what if you lost? You still should hand that off to someone. You should still hand that off to the engineering team. You should hand that off to your bosses. Sorry, got to hand that off. You have to understand, as a persuader in the technical world, especially in the AI era, there are really not that many secrets. There just isn't, but there's little nuances, little differences. And AI will help you find those faster, and AI will back you up when you deliver those things. Hey, Bill, the reason why they didn't go with us and they went with the other company was they had these 3 features. Maybe it's AI, maybe it's not. They had these 3 features, and we didn't. And that's it. It wasn't because so-and-so was a terrible salesperson. It wasn't so-and-so because they were black, white, or orange, or red. It wasn't because of any of these silly things that we attribute losses to, because we don't want to look at it. So when you debrief and then you hand off and you say, guys, here's the facts. We came out of our debrief meeting. These are the 3 things they really wanted, and the big 3 things. Can you now put that into the product for next time? And now when you go to the board and say, I need $3 million to develop a whole new wing system for the cars that we sell, we have evidence to bring to them. So you can see how it starts to make you into an organically growing company instead of artificially growing company. It starts to, what AI does is it brings more truth into the equation. I'll talk about the downside of it, but AI brings more truth to the situation, so that you can live to fight another day. Now, in race cars, it's the same thing. Look at all the safety advancements. Just using tech to build stuff in the past. Now we've got AI to help us build even better, safer, stronger, faster seatbelts to cars, to crush zones, everything else. And now we come back to the driver. When we look at a driver, we can now take AI and simulate a driving experience that's pretty close. Some of these kids that are coming up, 20, 18, 19, Kimi, all of these people that are coming onto the scene, These kids have been living in simulators and they are tried and tested. Well, he's only 17 years old. Yeah, but he's been racing sims since he was 6, and he's been racing go-karts since he was 7. Don't be fooled by the age. Be impressed by the knowledge. And what AI does is it accelerates the knowledge. It's a great accelerator. It could also be used for bad, Mads. I've talked about that. But let's leave the dark side out of it for a second. If you fill somebody's mind with facts, then it's going to be really hard to fill it with false lies. That's the power of AI. It's just a lot more of a philosophy than a tool.
So one question I want to make sure I get around to asking you is, which tools are you actually using for prototyping when it comes to AI?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, aren't there? Yeah, when it comes to tools, it's interesting. I mean, we've seen things like Jasper come onto the scene, kind of one-dimensional, kind of fade. We've got lots of companies that had lots of promise, and then they fade. And the interesting thing is I think the difference between those companies and the ones that are successful, like I think about Go High Level, I think about good old Salesforce, they're pivoting pretty well. When I look at these tools, it's really a question of where was it born? Was it born out of a dream and creativity, or is it just building a better mousetrap? And when I look at like ChatGPT, I look at Claude, I look at these tools here, they are, to me now, they are night and day is the way they work. They're night and day in so many ways. Like, for example, Claude really is very focused on one conversation at a time. You can go in and change the settings and you can turn it off. But it has been built to work in each stream of consciousness, each chain of thought. And what that does is it reduces the amount of hallucinations. Because it doesn't really have a lot to get confused, because it has its training, and then when you start a conversation with it, it'll just learn in that moment of time. It doesn't have any infections, if you will, from other conversations. Whereas other more open AI, more conversational, social platforms out there, they'll get a little confused on you. And guess what happens when you have confusion? You have hallucinations. Well, yeah, Darren, I know you're the president of the United States. I'm not the president. Where the hell did you get that from, right? But that's because I probably said I was the president of the United Sports Workers of EMEA. Something close, and it got confused. But the reality of it is that, each one has their place. Google's, AI is it's a fantastic researcher. It's an amazing researcher. So what I'm seeing as in the tools is the personalities of these neural networks that make up these large language models. And the transformers inside start to develop kind of a personality of obviously their programmer, to be honest with you. And what is their main goal? So when we come to tools, there's a lot, right? There's a ton out there. We have the first wave, and many of them will fail, just like the ones I mentioned. They'll fade off, they won't be there. But they are unfortunately part of the necessary evolution cycle of AI. There's going to be certain people that go to the wayside that had the best intentions. But when we come to tools, there's a few things that I look for. I really look for tools that progressively move you along, meaning they can handle the simple things, but then they also can handle the larger things. So, one of my favorites is Lovable. This is a prototyping. There's many other prototypers out there, but Lovable is very, very good. And it's very good because it has multiple agents. It has multiple capabilities, multiple talents, and you can walk into Lovable at any time. So if you want to design an app, you can go to Lovable. If you want to build a website, you can go to Lovable. It'll get you started. But what I also find about Lovable is that you can overload it. It's built for its personality is to get your prototyping down. It's a great prototype. And you then have to take it and go to a builder. You have to go to a developer. But it's a fantastic tool for being creative. And that's, I think, is the biggest thing that we as humans have to remember. is that the creativity will always come from us. It has to, it will. The cells, the cerebrals, the wisdom, should I fly this flight or fly that flight? There's going to be a part of you that says, I just don't feel like flying on that one. And then you're going to read in the paper that it crashed. Those are the things that AI will not be able to simulate. That human instinct, spirituality, intuitiveness, guys, I don't know, call it what you want. But the reality of it is that when we look at the tools, start picking the ones that respect you as a human, meaning it gives you the creativity. Gamma's another one of my favorite ones, an absolute favorite one of my tools. There's many out there. But what I love about Gamma is it lets me be human. It actually lets me make mistakes. And then it subtly comes in and says, I'm going to do what you said. However, you may want to do it this way. It's really kind of neat how they laid it all out and compartmentalized the design process, but still respect the designer in each one of us. Whereas others, they want to do everything for you. And what happens is that as you take the creativity out of that AI tool, humans will stop using it. So I don't know if that answers it perfectly for you, my friend, but there are certain tools that I love. I love Lovable. I love Gamma. Yeah, OpenAI, ChatGPT, I do love those. It depends on what we're talking about. Claude, I love Claude. He's the MBA in the room, but he's also sometimes just doesn't quite get the social side of things where ChatGPT does. I like Google. I really do like Google. I think it's an amazing researcher. And then, Perplexity is kind of an aggregator of all those things. It uses all those LLMs that I just mentioned, but it also puts it into a social wrapper, but also a commercialized wrapper. But it's pretty neat how they do that one. That's a great aggregator of data. So when it comes to tools, it's there. But I will say this, the things that people worry about with AI does mean that we all are going to eventually move to having our own LLMs. NVIDIA and those guys know it, right? They will sell you a little box, and you guys and everybody listening to the show can start looking into owning your own, and yes, we're going backwards, on-prem LLM. But it's yours, that you train, that's not connected to the cloud, that won't leak any of your data, that won't take you anywhere that you don't want to go. All the things you're afraid of, they're already working on stuff. And people are going to be a lot of these platforms, they're going to be investing in a lot of private equipment, handheld stuff. And it'll be yours. And yes, we will definitely get to the butler robot, and I plan on having one. But for today, I just want the tools that are going to get me to the first, second, third level, and then we'll worry about the robots and all that later. But it goes back to what I said about executives. If they understand the way that the machine thinks, right? I think in The Matrix, there's a line where I think Morpheus says, it sounds like the thinking of a machine to me. You guys remember that line at all? When you get to that level as an executive that Morpheus is at in that movie, that's science fiction. That's not quite some science fiction anymore. You start realizing that it's all about understanding the machine. And that's all AI is. It's just a machine. But picking what humans have come on and bring us machines that allow humans to be human, innovative, creative, wise, override, that's all good stuff. It's when it becomes totalitarian, again, mimics bad behavior of humans. That's when I don't use the app. Okay, this is too restrictive. This is too oppressive. This is that. Nope. This is for control versus creativity. And so what I look for in my tools is, does it let me be creative? And that's my advice to anybody.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up, actually.
And let them do what they do. They're just a machine.
So if you want us to have a conversation, the person listening to us, about the dark side of AI, humanity, all that stuff, leave a comment down below. We won't have time to get over it today. I really do appreciate you coming on the Business Library, Darren.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great being on, guys. And I always love talking about this stuff.
So where would someone go whatever type of business, where would someone go and learn how to get started?
Great question. You're going to want to go to someone like me. I can plug myself here, but obviously darrenfields.com. And what I have found, Mike, is that I used to offer a lot of fractional services, and I could come in and be a fractional leader in the C-suite, which I still do. And I have clients and I do that for. But it really comes back to the undercut, going back to Formula One. When you undercut, when you bring the gradient down and you bring them. So boot camps, trainings for executives, specialized stuff. It doesn't have to be a me, of course. There's other people doing this. But, great learnings. I'll put a plug in for them. They're the ones that I was in an engagement, executive vice president that worked for a family office, said, what do you know about AI? It's almost 3 years ago. I said, I told him I knew something about AI, fancy search engine or something. And he goes, you don't know anything. And then he showed me some stuff. But then it took a little while to deprogram myself a little bit, because Mark Bienoff talks about this being the greatest technology of any lifetime. Now, we've heard technology being great in this lifetime, but I haven't heard a lot of people say any lifetime. And so when Mark Bienoff said that, it takes a little bit of while to kind of settle in. So for people listening to the show, when I say it changes everything, they're not going to believe me. But it doesn't fix everything. They will believe me. So somewhere in between there, they've got to come grips with it changes everything. I mean everything. But it doesn't fix everything. But there's a learning that has to happen there. So I went back to school, took courses, became a certified prompt engineer. So, I joined CTOX, which was heavy technical leadership through AI, a guy named Lior and some others. The bottom line is that educate yourself. Do not leave this to somebody else. Do not delegate this to somebody else. Just take a 2-week here. Start watching YouTube. I don't care what you start doing. Get your own account. Start playing with it. There's not a lot that breaks. It's just a technology that you're going to find you can ask it anything. It's trained on trillions of bits of data now. You can ask it anything and it'll know an answer. It may not know the best way to paint, but it'll try and tell you how to paint. But the bottom line is that you got to just get in and start playing with it. Don't delegate it off to somebody else, because it's in my opinion, it is the biggest piece of technology to come across in any lifetime.
Cool.
It changes everything. That's a good way to put it. I like that middle ground. Well, definitely make sure to go down below, check out Darren's. We have all the links down there, of course. And I think there's definitely a nugget or two to be learned from him.
Yeah, thanks for being here today. That was super helpful. Very interesting.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. And anytime you guys want to talk or anytime you want to chat, it's something that I took to like a duck to water. It just was kind of interesting how it came together. But yeah, I'm always around. You guys can find me. Always happy to talk about
That'd
this.
be great. So when's the book come out? I want to read this.
Yeah,
July 10th?
Apex is going to be available on Amazon by July 10th. So Apex
Cool.
8, which is the art of persuasion in the technical era. It's written really for the humans and how to start working with AI in the technical era, especially when it comes to technical sales, solution consulting, all those things. Hopefully it's a big book. We'll see how it goes.
You never
It was a
know.
lot of fun to
Time
write
will
it.
tell.
It was a lot of fun it's been a lot of fun to watch a lot of the test readers kind of blows their minds. Like, oh, that's true.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. So the big question before we close out, which bike in your garage needs exercise today?
Well, it's a good question. The reality of it is that, I've gone down to just one vehicle, but we do plan to rebuild the arsenal. But the bikes are, I've had as many as 6 in the garage at one time, but right now it's down to 1. But I know my wife is going to want to get more because she loves riding. So we'll see what happens.
Well, good for you, man. That's a keeper right there.